South Africa was the possibility of land reform. In South Africa, it was a very young democracy. It had only been democratic for about 10 years. And people were hoping that there would be a transfer of all this accumulated wealth that the whites had managed to get for themselves, and that it would be redistributed. Because they had seen the Korean example. They had seen what happens when, with a strong state, there is land reform that allows an economy to grow and for prosperity to happen. They looked to the end of the Second World War in Korea as a moment where there was profound transformation, including the foundation of this newspaper in 1946. These moments of the post-war Korean economy and the land reform that accompanied it was very interesting for my colleagues in South Africa, many of whom were living in shacks, who were waiting for a profound transformation in the economy and a reconstruction to begin for them, just as it had in Korea in 1946. And we're going to get back to that practical politics of reconstruction. But first, let's talk about what is broken. You've heard some of these ideas already. You've heard, for instance, that we are experiencing a great deal of food price inflation. You can see here the Food and Agriculture Organization Producer Price Index. It looks like it's coming down. And for producers, the prices are going down. But for consumers, they are not. This is the OECD Food Price Index, and it's up to last month. And those figures are not going down. So even though for consumers the price is going up, for producers the prices are coming down, if you are on a low income, you feel the price of food in your pocket, and you feel the price going up and up and up. And I want to suggest that it's not high enough. The price of food has been artificially kept low, and the moment of this poly crisis is one that will see the constraints around food prices break. And so we are entering, as Professor Saito observed, a prolonged chronic crisis in capitalism. And I'm going to use food to demonstrate that. We can do it a simple way by just looking at the United States. In the United States, in 2020, we spent $1.1 trillion on food. But the Rockefeller Foundation did a study, and they said, well, yes, we spent $1.1 trillion on food, but what were the externalities of that food production? What needed to happen so that for the price we paid for food, other things happened in the economy? And what happened was all of this. So the analysis is a little complicated, I'll walk you through it. There was a cost of obesity to the healthcare system of $359 million. There were other non-communicable diseases, chronic diseases of inflammation from the food system. That was $604 million. There is a cost to hunger in America. It comes from depression, it comes from lost work days, and that was $146 million. There is pollution experienced by human beings from food production, from pesticides, from chemicals, $36 million. Then the food production system itself generates greenhouse gases, $223 million. It wastes water, $60 million. It destroys the soil. One study suggests that if we erode soil in America at the rate that we're doing now, we will only have 60 more harvests left. Until the topsoil is very fertile, the topsoil disappears. For that year, the cost was $67 million. And then we're losing biodiversity in our land, $342 million. The pollution that accrues to animals through die-offs of different species. I don't know if you had bee die-offs here, but in the United States we have catastrophic collapse collapses in bee populations, and they had to be replaced at a cost of $110 million. Then, in America, we still use child labor. If you want to ban that properly, $1 million. If there is a lot of wage theft, $33 million. There is a lot of dependence on migrant workers who don't get benefits. If you want to try to benefit properly, $76 million. And then, of course, a great deal of harm to workers, $24 million. And then also, the United States subsidizes agriculture to the tune of $21 billion a year. So I'm saying it, I'm really saying billion. So the total cost of our food spend, $2.1 trillion. Again, let me put that into perspective. We spend $1.1 trillion on food, but the externalities are at least $2.1 trillion. So the real cost isn't $3.2 trillion. It's $3.2 trillion plus the things we haven't valued. And capitalism depends on this trick of not paying its bills. So it looks like we're only doing $1.1 trillion, whereas in fact the overall cost is much, much higher every year. And what my friend Jason W. Moore and I have done is try and show how systemically capitalism doesn't pay its bills. So these are the 7 things that we talk about in our book, 7 key things. And I'm going to just explain how this works by giving you an example of one thing. And that one thing is maybe the most capitalist object in the world. It's not your cell phone, it's not a motor car, it's a chicken nugget. Chicken nuggets are the most capitalist object, because if there is a civilization after humans, and they look in the fossil record in what we are calling the Anthropocene, that probably should be called the Capitalocene, what will they find? They will find plastic. There's more plastic in the sea than fish by 2020. By 2050, there will be more plastic in the sea than fish. They will find radioactivity from our nuclear weapons tests, and they will find trillions of chicken bones. Because chicken is the world's most popular bird. There are 12 billion chickens alive today, but not for long. A chicken lives for 90 days, and every year humans eat 50 billion chickens. So there are trillions of chicken bones all over the world. And let's look at what goes into that, because these are the bills that capitalism cannot pay, and that we must reckon with if we're thinking about the politics that gets us from where we are now to this degrowth economy. So first of all, capitalism assumes that nature is an infinite rubbish bin and an infinite resource. So we can take chicken and mutate it into something that, with breasts so large it can't walk. This is the modern broiler chicken, and in its manufacture, 50% of the world's genetic diversity of chickens has been lost. We require workers to turn that bird into a nugget. In the United States, we've been very inventive. We use prison labor in some chicken processing plants. We use labor that is recovering from drug addiction, and the great advantage is that you don't have to pay much for these workers. And unfortunately, the era of cheap workers is running out. You heard before about the wage price spiral, and cheap workers, no matter where you look, are becoming much harder to find. So, although cheap work is important for the manufacture of chicken, it's running out. There is also a crisis in care. Because one of the things about making industrial chicken is it's very dangerous. You can lose your use of your finger, your wrist, your back. There are lung damage, there's fractures, there's knee injuries by falls, there's all kinds of psychological harm. And in the process of manufacturing industrial chicken, workers are discarded. And what happens to them? They need to be taken care of. And cheap care is an intrinsic part of the things that capitalism doesn't pay for. Often this is women's work, and in a patriarchal society, women are unpaid or underpaid for this kind of work. In order for workers to eat, they also need cheap food. This is an older advertisement from the United States, but it says the dollars will be good here. Each of these things you could buy for $1, or used to be able to buy for $1. But with the price of food going up and up and up, cheap food itself is running out. Now, one of the things that makes capitalism possible is a systematic availability of cheap money. If you are in America making small business, you can get cheap loans from the government. And this idea of low interest money exists even now if you are privileged. We talked about Silicon Valley Bank earlier on. What do you think happened to Silicon Valley Bank? Did everyone lose their money? No. They got an infinite line of credit for the depositors whose money was guaranteed there. Even in the midst of high interest rates, the elites are able to find cheap money. But for the rest of us, cheap money is running out. Again, as Professor Rubini pointed out, we are in a moment of the trilemma of high interest rates, high inflation, and dodgy economy. Cheap money is running out for most of us. Also, to make this food, you need cheap energy. You need ways of heating these industrial facilities. This is usually done with fossil fuel. And again, the climate crisis means that this model of heating with fossil fuels is no longer sustainable. And the last thing that capitalism depends on is a certain kind of racialized exploitation. If you look in who is doing the work in chicken production, as a proportion of this is the ratio of white people in the population at large, but far fewer of them are working in the chicken industry. Instead, you have a disproportionate level of black people, of Latinos, of Asian and Pacific Islanders, and of course, immigrants. Now, this is one of the ways that capitalism finds spaces for growth by exploiting social divisions to be able to underpay and subject workers who look different to brutalizing and lower income opportunities. So now let's think about what world we want to see. Because when we're talking about the cheapness of the world, what we're saying is that every capitalist economy has a hidden farm, and it has a hidden fuel source, a forest or a mine. And the same thing is true of this Green New Deal. I'm merely repeating what Professor Saito observed, that if we are going to transition from a fossil fuel economy into something that is about an electric economy, the projections from the International Energy Agency are that we will need massive increases in mining. There will be sacrifice zones, areas of the world that are turned into rubble in order that we can enjoy our clean, green economy. So, if we're not going to think about, if this is too difficult, if the idea of a clean, green economy makes you squeamish when you see all the mining, maybe there's a different mode of engaging with a zero-growth economy. One of the slogans that people are excited about, certainly in North America, is the idea of care and repair. In English it rhymes. The idea that we will care for one another and care for the earth, and we will repair our relationships with the planet and with the world around us. Now, in principle, I think that's terrific. But let's think about what care means. Because actually, it's helpful for us to imagine care. Because when in your life are you already open to expecting to have your income fall and your dependence on others increase, but in old age and when you are sick? These are moments when we suspend our engagement with capitalism and instead we are open to the idea that, yeah, I've got less money. Sure, I will exchange and share with other people. I will be dependent because I'm in a mode not of consumption, but of being cared for and for caring. It's the communism that we live every day in our families when we care for one another. This isn't some sort of world out there that we are waiting for. In some ways, as we age and we stop earning and we are dependent on the state or dependent on our families, we experience the kinds of exchange and sharing that we will all need to embrace much more fully before retirement in a green economy. So I think there's something interesting about a world of care as a tactic for degrowth. The problem is, in Britain, where the National Health Service was widely considered to be a shining example of what you can do in an economy immediately after the war. Again, the National Health Service was a post-World War II invention. It was something where people coming back from war, the workers, could have the sense for the first time in their lives that they would be taken care of if they fell sick. They would not have to go bankrupt. They would not have to worry about paying any money because this was something that the state did for them. And care is fantastic. It seems like it is low carbon and that it is a way that we can move in the world that gets us to a green, carbon negative approach to living. So let me show you this graph. This is a bit complicated, but it's worth understanding. There are a few different circles here. Let's start here at the high-income countries. If you look at the high-income countries, the green is the population that they have. The orange is their carbon footprint from healthcare. So even if you're thinking caring is just giving people hugs and wiping their butts, in fact, there's a great deal of carbon that goes into the healthcare industry. Everything from the nitrous oxide that is used as an anesthetic to the vast amount of plastic that is a permanent part of our mask lines. All of this very carbon intensive. But you also see that where it comes, while they have a very high level of emission, they are not very vulnerable to climate change compared to, say, the low-income countries. Very small population, the green is the very small population, tiny carbon footprint, and incredibly vulnerable to climate change. So even if we're thinking about care as a beyond growth strategy, we have to recognize history. And there is a history that you can see even in the national healthcare system. Under COVID, about 20% of the employees of the National Healthcare Service were like me, Black, Asian, or from a minority. But if you look at the deaths, our lives were cheap. The death rate for frontline workers in the healthcare industry was more than 60% of people who were blind. Now, that may seem like a world away, but think about in Korea, who is it that is doing the healthcare work? Who's doing frontline healthcare work? Is it perhaps immigrants? Is it perhaps Chinese Koreans who are here on different kinds of visas? And then think about how this story is relevant here. And of course, in order to fund the NHS, you needed what Dr. Shiva was saying earlier on, a world of extraction. One figure of the wealth extracted from India to the UK was $44 trillion. But actually, there's a long history of a lot of exploitation to fund the care system in the UK. So that's where I want us to really engage now with just some of the difficult practical politics. Because this is something that you're going to have to face. Here is the population pyramid for Korea in 1960. And you can see how that's changing. You can see how the population is aging as it grows up here. And it grows, and it grows. And then all of a sudden you see there is a population drop-off at the bottom. And so, as the population starts to decline in 2045 and 2050, all of a sudden you have a career that looks rather different. And then you have to ask, who is going to do the care work? And how will you pay for it? And this is not an easy question to answer, but if we keep things the same, then it's very easy to see who's going to do the work. Because this is from the International Labour Organization, and what it's showing is the number of minutes per day that men and women spend doing care work. You can see globally, women do 265 minutes of unpaid care work, 183 minutes of paid care work. Men do 83 minutes of unpaid care work, 322 minutes of paid care work. And you can imagine what the typologies are here. Over here you have nursing, you have low-paid home care work and work for care for the elderly. Over here you have more work around doctoring and surgical specialities. In Asia, the figures are about the same. There's in fact a little bit more total care work for women. But the story here is that if we keep things the same without confronting patriarchy, then we're going to run out, we're going to essentially say it is women's job to carry the weight for the global care work that is required. And as I say, the picture in Asia is of such inequality and an assumption that women will voluntarily and cheerfully submit to large parts of the day, hours of the day doing unpaid care work. That this degrowth rests on pillars of exploitation that need to be named. So what then is the practical politics that gets us away from this? Now, I want to just bring these ideas together to a close. There are, for instance, cooperatives. Cooperatives where people care for one another and exchange labour freely. In some ways, it looks exactly like a kind of degrowth communism. Because folk are sharing their resources, they are sharing their care work, and they are forming communities that have each other's back. And you can see this in Okinawa, for example. There are care communities that are very interested and committed to caring for elders. These are groups of elders doing it for one another. But I want for us to think finally about what it would be like for us to care for one another, even if we are not elderly yet. And this is where I want to end where I started. These are my friends from South Africa. They are part of a movement of tract dwellers. And they have a very different understanding of care. In their communities, unemployment is around 70%. And there are very few jobs to be had. And so they have to form communities that do a number of things. So every one of these shack dweller communities has a creche, a facility for raising children. It also has a process for providing public security, for caring for elders. It also has land occupation as part of the movement. And they're very interested in farming agroecologically, in the way that Dr. Shibo was mentioning earlier on. The ways that they are interested in farming in other areas sequesters carbon, it generates a net positive income, and it feeds their communities in ways that allow their bodies to thrive. They're not poisoning them like we are in America. This is good, healthy food. And there is an understanding that the communal work and the communal care and the communal food and the communal respect for nature go together. And I think this is the point that I want to leave you with. That they are building this right now because there is no alternative along the liberal path for them. This kind of lived communism, I mean, you can see some of the symbols of communism here. They begin their meetings by singing the Internationale. And I think it's very interesting that we don't have to wait for the climate crisis. You know, I'm from Texas, and right now in Texas, last week, the heat index in Texas was 48 degrees Celsius. We don't have to wait for the climate emergencies to hit us. These are already real. And we have social organizations emerging around the world that are recognizing that deep growth is achievable and necessary. And they're doing it in a way that reminds us of how liberalism came about in the first place. Liberal capitalism has always been a compromise. It has always been what the bourgeoisie offered in exchange for the pacification of radicals and the working class. With liberal capitalism has extinguished the forces of radical unionism in many places, but not everywhere. And if we want a future with deep growth in it, then we must look to organizations like this, rather than